In this video, I'm going to go over how to pack a backpack for a backpacking trip. I'll give you all the tips that I use that can maybe help you out a little bit as well. The very first thing that you're going to need to do is gather all of your gear and food and everything that you're going to need. And in order to do that, you're going to need a list. If you don't have your own backpacking packing list, then there are plenty of options that you can find online. And in the description of this video, I'll put a link to my own personal packing list, which you can also use. Just keep in mind that that packing list is specific to the conditions that I hike in. So if you're going to be encountering snow, or if you're going to be required to do actual rock climbing, then that gear is probably not going to be sufficient. The next thing that you're going to have to do with all of this equipment and food that you've gathered is to test it all out, make sure that nothing is broken. And at the same time as you're doing that, you're going to want to repackage whatever you need to repackage. So people often think of food here, and it's true, you do need to repackage your food, but even things like sunscreen or wet wipes or cream that you might be taking with for chafing, all of those things can be repackaged to make them lighter. So if you haven't done any of that, then you can pause the video and start doing that first. At this point, what I do with my gear is I now sort it into categories. So I've got everything divided into my different categories now. The largest one is stuff that I will need at camp, because it contains things like my sleeping bag, my tent, most of my clothes, and most of my food. Then things that I need but am allowed to remove my pack to access are things like my bowl, my cup, sunscreen, toilet paper, my extra water bottle, my rain jacket, my headlamp, my lunch, and the power banks that I use for charging my electronics. And then the smallest category of things are things that I want to be able to access without taking off my pack, and I'll show you those individually. The first biggest one is, of course, water. I use a hydration bladder, so the access to the water is not really a problem at all. This is going to be pretty deep in my pack, but I'll be able to drink water while I'm walking without ever taking off my pack. Then the other thing that I always want to have access to immediately is a can of mace, and I put this in the hip belt pocket of my backpack. And then while I'm walking, I want to have access to my snacks, my morning and afternoon snacks. The one is sweet and the one is salty. So I will put these either in the hip belt pocket of my backpack or in the other little black bag there, which contains my camera equipment. This little black bag is going to be strapped on to my hip belt. It's got a little Velcro flap here that straps onto the hip belt, and inside of here is going to be all of my camera equipment. The backpack that I'm using for this trip is my Deuter Air Contact 50 plus 10 liter SL backpack. And it does actually have a sleeping bag compartment at the bottom, but you can unzip the whole thing and make it into one giant backpack. I actually don't do that. I store quite a lot of gear at the bottom, and then it makes it a little bit easier for me to get to that gear. The very first thing that I do is pack the bottom of this backpack as a separate compartment, pack that fully and make sure that the compression straps are tightened, and then I start packing the main compartment of the backpack. Then I move on to the lid and the hip belt. The first thing that goes inside of the sleeping bag compartment is my sleeping bag. I've got it in a dry bag so that if it does rain, the sleeping bag doesn't get wet. Then next to the sleeping bag, I'm going to put my tent, the main body of my tent. I've got the poles and the pegs separately because it's just a bit easier to pack it that way. And then I'll start adding in a few more smaller things. Next, I add my toiletry ditty bag, and I also add this little Ziploc bag, which has extra plastic bags in it to pack the tent in if it's wet, or to pack dirty clothes in if they need to not touch other stuff, and a spare lighter for my cook kit. Then lastly, in the bottom compartment, I put my cook kit. This is the MSR reactor, and inside of the pot, I have a lighter, a sponge, and the gas, and the stove itself is right in the bottom. So now I've got the bottom compartment of my backpack completely full. I'm going to do up the straps and the compression straps at the bottom, and then I'll move on to the main part of the backpack. I line the entire main part of my backpack with some kind of a pack liner, so just some sort of waterproof bag to keep everything inside it from getting wet when it rains. I'm going to now put my hydration bladder inside the backpack, in between the pack liner and the body of the backpack, just because it's a little bit more difficult to get the hydration bladder in when the backpack is also stuffed with stuff. If your backpack has some kind of hook or Velcro or strap to hold your hydration bladder up, then definitely make sure that you attach it to this, because as you drink from your hydration bladder, it's going to want to collapse. And if there isn't something that's holding onto the top of the hydration bladder, there might still be water in the hydration bladder, but as it collapses, it might prevent you from getting to that water, and you definitely don't want that to happen. Whenever you're packing a backpack, you must always make sure that the compression straps, wherever they are on the backpack, are completely loose. Otherwise, it's going to make packing it really difficult, and you might end up packing it in a bit of a lopsided manner. I'm now going to put my bedroll inside of my backpack. On the inside of the pack, it's going to be in sort of this formation so that it creates a cylinder, and I'm going to pack things inside the cylinder and outside the cylinder wherever I can find space, just to reduce the dead space. This particular bedroll is cut to a torso length. That's why I can fit it inside of my backpack. If you're using a full length foam bedroll, you will probably have to strap it to the outside of your pack, and that's completely fine. Just do that right at the end of your packing and make sure that you waterproof it somehow, because it doesn't really help if the inside of your pack is waterproof and your bedroll is soaking wet. I've just put the backpack on the ground because it's a bit easier for me to pack this way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my clothing items and I'm going to pack it around the bedroll as tightly as I possibly can, and then I will move on to the harder items that are not as malleable. A nice side effect of having this foam bedroll on the inside of my pack is that it protects my back from any hard objects. But you should think about that when you're packing. You don't want hard objects to be poking you in the back while you're walking. The other thing that you don't want to do is put really, really heavy objects like your food and water right at the top of the backpack. That's going to make it very difficult for you to keep your balance, because it's going to act like a gigantic lever pushing you forward or backwards whenever you change your own balance. So you want to try and put your heaviest objects as close to your back and as close to the middle of the backpack as possible. So now I've done all of the items that are in my need only at camp category, and I have done some other items like my water bladder as well. I'm going to now move on to the items that I want to be able to get to fairly easily. This is my extra water container in case my water bladder springs a leak, or if I need to collect extra water for camp. I'm just going to put that fairly close to the top. Then this is the little waterproof bag that I have my power banks in, including the solar power bank. So I'm also going to put that relatively close to the top. And by looking at what I have left on the table, I'm pretty confident that I can fit the rest of the stuff into the lid or the other outside pockets of the bag. So I'm now going to close up the main section of the bag. At this point, it's a good idea to start doing up the compression straps on the main part of the bag before you start packing the pockets. So on my bag, I have an inside lid pocket and an outside lid pocket. On the inside lid pocket, I'm going to put my first aid kit. And that's the only thing I'm going to put on the inside lid pocket. Then on the outside lid pocket, I'm going to put my bowl. This is one of those snap together bowls. So you just snap all the corners together and it becomes a bowl. But I also use it as a plate for lunch. So I'm going to put that in the top lid pocket, along with my headlamp in case we're hiking and it starts getting dark, and my rain jacket in case we're hiking and it starts raining, and my lunch, my cup which goes with the plate, and my spoon because I'm going to need something to smear the peanut butter onto the crackers. I'm also going to put in the top lid of my bag my Ziploc trash bag, and because my hydration bladder has a Sawyer mini squeeze filter on it, I'm going to pack the backwash plunger for that filter into the top lid pocket as well. I'm now going to put my mace and my 2 snacks for the day into the hip belt pocket. The only things that I have left to pack now are my repackaged sunscreen, which I definitely want to have access to, and my toilet paper and hand sanitizer and tiny mini trowel. And I'm going to pack these in the outside pouches on either side of the backpack. And this is the packed backpack. Some backpacks are not going to have enough space for all of the things that you want to take with you. And if you do need to strap something to the outside of the bag, that's not the end of the world. Just remember to secure it properly so that it's not flapping around and it can't fall off. And remember to waterproof it in case it does rain. You should also just remember that anything that you strap to the outside should not impede your own movement too badly. I'm just going to see how much this weighs. So that weighs 14.9 kilograms. This 14.9 kilogram backpack is going to be going with me on the Drakensberg Grand Traverse, which is a very long backpack all the way from the Sentinel car park on the north edge of the Drakensberg escarpment to the south edge at Bushman's Neck. Our route is going to be about 230 kilometers, and we are going to attempt to do it in 8 days, which is the main reason why this backpack is so incredibly heavy, because I have 4 kilograms of food in here, and then the 2 liters of water as well. Luckily in the Drakensberg you can replenish water relatively easily, touch wood. It's going to be a really big adventure, and I'm so excited to get out there and do it. And probably at the moment when you're watching this video, I'm actually in the Drakensberg mountains, hopefully not suffering too much and hopefully managing to make the mileage that we need to per day. But if there is a bit of a delay between this video and the next video coming out, it's probably because of the Drakensberg Grand Traverse that I'm on or recuperating from. And if you would like to see the video of the Drakensberg Grand Traverse and what transpires there, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because that video will be coming out fairly soon.